So Herc's going to defeat King Haku at WrestleMania 5, Greg Valentine at SummerSlam 89. He's got spots in the Survivor Series and in the Rumble, so he's always in the mix and always getting a pay-per-view payoff. But speaking of payoffs, somewhere in here is probably around the time where you've told us a story before about the time he went to meet with the office and talk a little bit about his finances and circumstances. Can you refresh our memory on that one?
Well, Herc was just having a hard time managing
expenses,
his funds, if you will.
Yeah.
And came in to speak with our chief financial officer. I don't think they called him CFO. I just called him head accountant at the time, Doug Sages.
Right.
And Doug says, all right, well, first of all, you got any credit cards? Herc was like, yeah. And he says, all right, let me see them. And Herc took out his credit cards and put them on the table for Doug. And Doug took out a pair of scissors and cut up all his credit cards. And Herc's like, what are you doing? And he goes, well, first thing you got to do is you got to stop using these, and you can't afford it and pay cash for it, then you don't get it. And from that point on, Herc would tell that story and christened Doug as Chainsaw Sages because he cut up all of his credit cards. And so Doug would forever be known as Chainsaw. And I actually ran into Doug's son at a restaurant up in Monroe, Connecticut not long ago. And he was waiting on us and introduced himself and says, he goes, yeah, he goes, I know who you are. He goes, you used to work with my dad. And it's like, who are, I'm looking at him, and he resembles Doug quite a bit. And when he told me, I was like, oh my God, Chainsaw. And laughed and all this stuff. So Chainsaw lives on.
Chainsaw lives on. So we mentioned he's always in the mix here, but it doesn't feel like he has anything of substance. And it's been said a lot back in this day that Vince really spent a lot of time on the main event and everything on the undercard was just sort of there. What more could have been done with Hercules as a face? I mean, I'm guessing there maybe were some higher expectations in the office. Is it that he didn't connect well enough with the audience? He didn't get over enough? Was he just better as a heel? What say you?
I just don't think that he connected with the audience all that well and didn't have the gift of gab, which as a top babyface, you've got to be able to connect with the audience. And again, it was a different business back then. You can't compare the business in the 80s to the business today. It's a completely different business and was a completely different business plan back in the 80s, and that you just needed to create stars. And it wasn't, with the exception of the top matches, it wasn't about the issues and the angles and things like that.
He's also changed into the dreaded babyface blue tights, and they used him to put over Earthquake at WrestleMania 6. That's probably his last important gig as a babyface.
Also tried to get him to get a tan too, which was damn near impossible.
Oh, talk me through that.
Oh, just hurt. You ever like get out in the sun? And he's like, nah, you know. And so they tried to get him to get in tanning bed and just get some sun and not be as pale. And he tried it, got burnt pretty good. And he was like, quickly gave up the tanning process. Wasn't fond of it. You know, like some of us used to worship that damn tanning bed.
Now, this is before you could just do the self-tanner gimmick, right?
Well, they had self-tanner, but the self-tanner was orange.
Yeah. Hercules gets a prominent role on the next Saturday night's main event. This one's in South Bend, Indiana, April 28th. He's going to lose by DQ to the new Intercontinental Champion, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, in his first televised defense. Is Herc thought of as someone to give a big push to when you're first stepping foot in the door in your first few weeks? Or, I mean, what was your first read on his lot in the company?
I don't know that I necessarily really had one. It was a different presentation, and you had to look at, I was learning a lot about WWE at that point and seeing how they were doing business and what the end goal really was. And it was different in so many respects from what I had grown up on. And you have to try new things on, and looking at it from that point of view. It's okay. They build guys and they build stars, and then people pay to see the stars. That was the business model at the time. So it wasn't so much, oh my God, you've got to see, you had your issues with Hogan. You had your issues. People had issues, but they weren't these major programs that I was used to, that, you know, every single week you do something new and you freshen it up every week and that it's added on to. It's like, no, you had issues with guys that you're reminded about each week, but it wasn't a heavy angle oriented place.